Hello everyone, this is Tom, the Lone Wolf Prepper, and I want to do a video today about a skill that every prepper should have, maintaining your chainsaw, especially your chain. Okay, we're going to sharpen this chain here, and the one thing about a chain, you got your teeth and your rakers. I can take a chain down to there's almost no teeth left, and I'm taking the rakers down because when the teeth get so far, you got to start taking the rakers down too. It needs to be a dime's worth of distance between that and that, the raker and the tooth. But anyway, we're going to sharpen the chain today. Now, I don't need to take the chain off the bar to sharpen, but the first thing you need to do is find where to start. Okay, this particular chain Echo, they have two rakers in a row. Steels usually have either a yellow mark or two teeth that are pointing in the same direction in a row. But this gives you your starting point and stuff. You sharpen a chain, you always want to use the same number of strokes on each tooth. And there's a line on here to say what angle you're supposed to be at and stuff. And they make a tool and stuff that's got a gauge and stuff. I don't use none of that stuff. Okay? So, first tooth here. Remember, same number of strokes, usually about 5 to 7. Make sure you're using a good file, a good cutting file. Yeah. When I started working for a tree service, I'd practice sharpening saws on my lunch period. I got really good at it. Now I'm one of them that like to perfect it. Anyway, one thing about those Dremel tools that they use for these, it doesn't take much heat to temper these teeth. The thing with the Dremel tool, you see I'm just using a file, right? Barely any, not that much pressure, it's a sharp file. But they get those Dremel tools and they just sit there, put it on the tooth and they just cook the tooth. And it ruins the tooth, okay? I mean, you'd use a Dremel tool, it's a little bit. Just keep going. Sharp chain is very important. Prolongs the life of your saw. Okay, also, you know, another thing that tempers the teeth is if you got a dull chain and you're hammering on it, especially if you see smoke coming up, you're tempering the teeth. They get hard and they won't sharpen. And you know, even if you can feel that the tooth gets sharp already, you still got to give it the same amount of strokes. Because you want the chain to wear all at the same rate. You say, I can get these teeth down to where they're nothing. Where they're just basically, you know, they're nothing. I get full use out of my chains, believe me. Just keep going. As long as you have a really sharp file, if you gotta start putting a lot of pressure on it, you ain't got a sharp enough file. And then you want to sit there and knock off the metal shavings. You're not big. One more on this side. There's my double. So I got that side done. Now people may say, why do they go back and forth? Because that's what keeps your bar going straight through the wood. Anyway, now we'll start on this side. Same thing, 5 strokes. Just like so. Yeah. Taking that chain off the bar and all that stuff. When you're in a tree service, that takes up too much time. You're on the clock, trying to get stuff done. Especially when you're dealing with a 3-foot bar. You know, that's what I use for my real big wood, cut down big stumps. Just like so. Nothing hard about it at all. As soon as I get it sharp here, I got a log here we're going to try it out on. See what kind of shavings this thing will kick out. One thing about how tight you want the chain, always go to the bottom. You want some play in there, not loose play. You want it to go back tight against the bar, but you want some play. And the one thing I forgot to mention, there are times you have to file down your bar. The edge of your bar here will get a ridge on it. And if you start cutting and your chain's sharp, but your bar is like it's getting hung up on the wood, it's kind of got an edge. You just take your fingernail and you can feel it. You take a flat file, and go on that edge on both sides, and get that edge off. Now most people don't use saws like we did in this, but one thing about cutting wood too, real dry wood is the hardest on a bar. Especially if you ain't got where you can oil inject the bar. What I mean by that is where you got a button by your throttle that you can hit. You gotta put oil onto your bar instead of just doing it manually. But I went through a few bars really doing some dry wood, but that's what you do in business. That's why they make supplies. Just like so. Yeah, we're almost there. And we'll cut a little bit. Just like so. Nothing major. Alright. Let's see how it's going to cut now. Alright, let's get this onto my log here. Let me adjust the camera. Looks like that should do it. Let's get some of this log cut. Not a problem. When you start a saw, there's a couple ways of doing it. The way I do it is I put it between my legs, make sure you got a good grasp on the bar. I don't lock the lock bit, but anyway, make sure your stuff is on. This way the saw can't come at you. Yeah, I got it. That seemed to do it. that's my prepping video for today. I hope everybody enjoyed it on sharpening the saw. This is Tom, the Lone Wolf Prepper. See y'all later.